Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So we're gonna resume the Yelan Math series, but because this is a very quick update on the final changes to Yelan in beta, and I'm gonna update across the 4 comms that I've covered so far. It's not gonna be a long video, so I don't really want to call this a math guide. I'll just call this a quick Yelan update with regards to the final changes for her in beta, because beta has ended, and these are the changes I can tell so far. Unfortunately, these aren't changes that are really relevant to F2P players because it affects the constellations more than her passives or her talents. Okay, so it's very straightforward. I'm just going to talk about the changes. I'm going to do a comparison before and after the changes for the 4 comms, TLDR, and the video series. That's it. Very fast. So without further ado, let's start. So as you can see right off the bat, right, it is C3 and C6 that is being changed here. Basically, C3 and C5 is swapped. Instead of increasing E by 3 levels, it increases Q by 3 levels, which is expected because most of the time, C3 is buffing the talent. Between the E and the Q, it's always buffing the talent that is more important or a bigger contributor for the character itself. So in this case, it's Q, it's Yelan's burst, so that's why it has been changed. I'll say this is a buff for dolphins, not just whales. I mean, to me, dolphins are charactered by players or individuals who spend, who may get C2, C1, or C3. It's a buff because her Q does have majority of the damage. It's close to 60% of her overall damage. So getting this at C3 instead of C5 is great. And on top of that, it also improves the performance C4 because C4 is added onto C3, right? So in other words, this C3 and C5 swap is actually good for both C3 and C4, as opposed to the previous permutation where C5 increases the Q, not C3. So yeah, this is a good change, but for spenders really. The next change, C6, I mean, is obviously for wheels, but since there are changes, right, I'm just going to cover it. Now, what happens is that instead of 630% breakthrough bulk charge attacks fired via 6 normal attacks, the new C6 is now 5. Instead of 6, it's 5. But the percentage is higher. The multiplier is 156% of the normal breakthrough bulk. And it's fired through 5 normal attacks. So if you look at the difference, right, the percentage difference, it's actually pretty much the same. Because the additional 26% multiplied by 5 is 130%. So you take away one arrow, but basically the additional boost is distributed amongst the remaining 5. Think of it that way. Which means that you also deal it slightly faster in 5 instead of 6 normal attacks. But action wise, I can tell you it's the same. Because M4, she only has 4 attacks in her normal attack string, and the last attack is 3 hits. So whether it's 6 or 5, you still need to press M4 to do the 3 hits. So in other words, it's a very slight boost where you get additional 1 physical hit from M4. It's just a physical hit, okay? Not a hydro hit. But in VapeEC comp, since one of the 5 VB charge attacks will be forward vaped, it's actually better than just 1 physical hit, but obviously this is only good for wheels. But at least at least it's an improvement, right? Now, let's see what it actually means in terms of the percentages in the respective comps that I've covered. So first comp will be the VV Vape, because I believe this is the comp that most people will be interested in for Yelan. So this is the before figure, no change from previously. Okay, sorry. No change from the previous figures. Now let's look at the after, which is the new figures. You'll notice that if we look at the DPS figure, right, it's ever so slightly higher at C6, but at C3, if we look at 4 emblem, this is 34848. 4 emblem here is 37410. So like I said, C3 and C5 sword is actually pretty good. Not too bad. So the C4 figures are also improved by C3 as I've mentioned. So basically this swap C3 and C5 squad gives us mostly 7 to 8% boost, as you can see, on C3 and C4, as opposed to before these changes, which is nice for Dolphin and Wheels. C6 is a very slight increase that I've mentioned. So it's 0.10 to 0.13. So it's as good as no change. let's be honest, this is as good as no change. Okay? The big picture of things. So likewise for Yoimiya Vape, this is before, this is after, and this is the percentage difference, which much easier to see. So basically, Vape is very similar to Vape with a very slightly higher margin, where it's 8 to 9% instead of 7 to 8% boost on from the C3 and C5 swap on C3 and C4. C6 is 0.11 to 0.15, so it's still as good as no change. Next will be Yelan Taser, before figures, after figures, and the actual comparison, which makes it easier for us to talk about, right? So obviously C1, C0 to C2, there are no changes at all from this. Now you'll see that the Taser is just like the Vape, but it's instead of slightly higher like Vape, it is slightly lower now for Taser. So C3 and C5 swap gives us mostly 6 to 7% boost on C3 and C4. The reason is also because in Taser, Yelan is dealing more damage, so it's a little bit of diminishing return. That's the reason why. And if you remember, Vape also does the least damage, right? Yep. So that's why the margin is slightly higher. In this case, Taser margin is slightly lower than Vape, but honestly, it's more or less the same. I mean, it's a range of 7 to 8, 8 to 9, 6 to 7. C6 likewise, in this case, it's even lower, it's 0.07 to 0.10. So still the same thing, as good as no change for C6. But here's the interesting one. In Yelan VapeEC, where we look to forward vape her E as well as one of her C6BBCA, the before figures, the after figures. Okay, if anyone wants to pause and look at the figures. And this is the percentage comparison. So unlike the first three comps, VapeEC has a different result arising from the changes. Now, since VapeEC focuses on forward vaping her E, which has the highest multiplier, that's why we are doing that. The gain from the C3 and C5 swap only gives you about 2 to 3 boosts, which means that in a VapeEC, Q originally already has a lower majority share in VapeEC. It's not as high as 60% in the other comps. Okay, very nice and easy to explain. This is the reason why the C3 and C5 swap doesn't really do much for VapeEC con, but it's still an improvement. I mean, it's still 2 to 3%. C6 is also higher, the margin difference here. I mean, instead of 0.1%, it's now 0.7 to 0.8. So the difference is bigger, close to 1%, but to be honest, it's still not that noticeable of a change. But at least it's an improvement. Okay, that's what I can say. Yeah, so basically the TLDR, the final changes in beta is a C3 and C5 swap plus a compressing of the C6 effect from 6x 130% BBCAs to 5x 156% BBCAs plus 1x physical normal attack hit since M4 is 3 hits. You will launch those 3 hits regardless. So for Yelan Vape, Vape, and Taser, the C3 and C5 swap gives you about 6 to 9% boost on C3 and C4, so that's good for Dolphin and Wheels. The C6 change is as good as no change really, since it's only 0.7 to 0.15%. For Yelan VapeEC, the C3 and C5 swap only gives 2 to 3% boost on C3 and C4, since E's are VapeEC, thus the Q majority share is lower. But 2 to 3% is still okay. It's still more than the C6 change. Now the C6 change is still not that noticeable, since it's 0.7 to 0.8, but it's still a lot better than 0.07 to 0.15. I mean, it's still an improvement. Okay? Remember that these are all just buffs. We shouldn't really complain about buffs, right? Although these are buffs for Dolphins and Whales, to be honest. Yeah, unfortunately. They shouldn't do this as the last change. They should do this as one of the earlier changes. And then people would be more receptive to it, I guess. But anyway, if you want the details, please refer to the specific sessions. I'll do chapters in my videos as usual. Now let's talk about what's coming next for Yelan. We finished the artifact comparison, we finished the team con rotations, we finished the full HP versus crit build. So obviously the next one is going to be weapon math, and I'm going to do for Favonius next. In fact, I have actually completed the math for Favonius C0 versus Sacrificial. Let's just say it's as per what I have expected. Okay. Alright. So if there's any specific weapons you would like, you can definitely highlight it. Just because I mentioned this field doesn't mean that I'm only going to do this field. These are just some that I can think of right off the top of my head. That's all. Okay. So do join me over at Twitch where I answer almost every question there, and we stream almost every day, except on Saturdays, because Saturdays I rarely cannot stream. Okay, due to my personal commitments. So the link for Twitch is here, and the link is in the description as well. So do check out the link and come and join me over at Twitch. If the content has been helpful to you, remember to like the content and click subscribe for more. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.